everyone, and welcome to my channel, Babbling Books. If it's your first time here, my name is Elaine. So this is going to be my July wrap-up. I read a total of 10 books, and I hit my goal of 100 books this year already. So I think I'm going to change my goal to maybe 150. A lot of my reading slows down during the winter holidays. But so out of the 10 books, 2 were audio and 8 were physical copies. And I had a great reading month in July. I had 3 5-star reads. And so I have got some really great recommendations for you guys. So to start with is The Counselors by Jessica Goodman. So this was marketed as a horror, but it's really not. It's more of a thriller. So the book centers around a summer camp called Alpine Lake. And Alpine Lake is on the outskirts of a small town that is not prosperous. And the main character's name is Goldie, and she is a townie. And the only reason she's able to go to this camp is because her parents work there. The other campers are from very well-to-do, influential families. The kids have to take an entrance exam and send in, oh, sorry, my cat shook the tree. And take an entrance exam and send in a video interview to get accepted. So Goldie's best friends are 2 very wealthy teenage girls that live on the East Coast. The only time Goldie sees them is when they come to the camp for the summer. And this year, they're counselors. And basically, they kind of stumble onto some information. Somebody ends up being killed. Goldie thinks the person was murdered, and she starts to investigate it. And like I said, it's a thriller. I was literally reading this in the living room. My son and his girlfriend and my daughter were in the kitchen. And I finally got to a part where somebody died. And I was like, finally, somebody was murdered. And my kids were like, Mom! So it's a thriller, not a horror. I ended up giving this a 3-star, but I think that was more because it didn't meet my expectations. But it's well written. The plot is very well thought out. The character development is decent. And I also think there was too much going on in this book. There were so many strings and you're trying to untangle them, and then the author finally brings them together. But I guess I really just didn't enjoy that. So it ended up being a 3-star for me. I would still read another book by that author because it was a well-written book. So I think that maybe there's another book by her that I would enjoy more. And this is Dress Coded by Carrie Firestone. So this is a middle grade book, which I don't read very many, but a few have been catching my attention recently, and this is one of them. So this is about a girl named Molly who is absolutely fed up with the way the school's dress code is affecting the female students. So she starts a podcast where she interviews the female student body, and they tell their story, why they were dress coded and how it affected them, both educational wise and their mental health. And I love the message. I love how the girls from all different walks of life and different experiences sort of band together to set this right, that they are tired of the way that they have been treated and the way it is impacting them. So I very much recommend this. This was a 5-star read for me. And I want to read more books by this author, and I'm going to keep this one for when my daughter is a little bit older, but I highly recommend that one. And then we have The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. So this is actually the second Kingfisher book that I read in July. I ended up giving this one a 4-star because I didn't like it as much as the first one, but this is a standalone. And a woman named Mouse, that's her nickname. Her dad calls her and says, your grandmother has died. Would you please go to her house and clean it out for me so that we can put it on the market? And Mouse agrees, and she and her bloodhound show up at her grandmother's house, and the grandmother was like universally reviled. I'm exaggerating, but nobody liked her. She was a pretty horrible person. She was actively mean. There was no redeeming qualities about her whatsoever. So when Mouse shows up, the grandmother was a hoarder, and not in the sense of like, 20 cats have been using it as a litter box or anything, but lots of stuff. So while she's cleaning the house out, Mouse discovers her step-grandfather's journal, and it's full of these rambling, creepy things. And Mouse starts to see some of the things that her step-grandfather had written. So the thing about T. Kingfisher is she builds the tension brick by brick by brick until it feels like it is choking you. And her side characters, in this book in particular, there's a commune across the street, and Mouse becomes friends with the older woman that lives there. When I say older, she's probably in her 50s. And their banter is hilarious. The character development is fantastic, as well as the plot. I love this author. I want to read everything that she's ever written. And the only reason this one got a 4-star from me was because I had just finished reading her other book and I liked it better. But I highly recommend this one. And I know I mentioned that the main character has a dog. So just FYI, the dog is safe, okay? Because I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. And so if you want to read this, but you're worried about the dog, don't worry about the dog, okay? So then I read 10 by Gretchen McNeil. Oh, is that right? Yes, Gretchen McNeil. So this is about 10 teenagers that are going to spend the weekend at a house with no adults, and this home is on an island off of the East Coast. It seemed like it was somewhere near New York. And the main character's name is Meg. Her best friend's name is Minnie. So Minnie suffers from a lot of mental health conditions, or not a lot, a few mental health conditions. And Meg is feeling a lot of guilt because she is about to leave to go to college like 1,000 miles away. So she feels like she's abandoning Minnie. And Minnie is not helping because she's just making sure that Meg knows that she is abandoning her. So they get to this island. It is the house is in an incredibly remote location, very difficult to get to. And there are some teenagers that go to another school that they have never met. Minnie's ex-boyfriend is there with his new girlfriend, and a boy that both Meg and Minnie are crushing super hard on is there. So there's a lot of tension for a lot of different reasons, a lot of personality clashes, and then somebody is murdered, and they are trying to figure out if somebody else is in the house or if one of these 10 is a murderer. So this was a solid story. It's told in the first person from Meg's point of view, which I prefer third person. So it was a decent read. The plot was well thought out. I think the characters behaved in a realistic manner. So a solid 3-star, maybe even a 3.5 star. I just didn't find it incredibly unique, but there was also nothing wrong with it. And then we have Obsession by Jessie Q. Sutanto. So it says right here on the cover, boy meets girl, boy stalks girl, girl gets revenge. Doesn't that just sound fantastic? So the book starts out from Logan's point of view, and he is the stalker. And it was like being dropped right into the head of some creep from a Criminal Minds episode. So that was fantastic and so creepy. And then the girl that he's obsessed with, her name is Delilah. And Delilah is in a rough situation at home. Her mother's boyfriend is physically abusive to the both of them. He's verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. Those things are not described in great detail, but you're aware of it. So trigger warning for that. And Logan is, like he says, obsessed with Delilah, and Delilah, as it says on the cover, figures it out and decides that she is not going to take this anymore, and she's not going to let this boy treat her this way. My only issue, I would have preferred a different revenge plot than the one Delilah settled on, but that's a personal issue. I think a lot of people would absolutely love this. I'm going to pass this along to my son's girlfriend because I think she'd really enjoy this. But this was a good 3.5, maybe even a 4-star. It just didn't quite meet my expectations towards the last quarter of the book. But I did like the ending, if that makes sense. But there was this one thing I can't talk about without doing a spoiler that I just really didn't really like. But I would read more books by this author without a doubt. And I still think it was a pretty solid book. And then I listened to The Puppet Show by M.W. Craven on audio, narrated by John Banks. So this is book 1 in the Washington Poe series. I saw this book on Jen Campbell's channel, so if you have not checked her channel out, please do. She is one of my all-time favorite booktubers. She's fantastic. So I'll put her link in the description box down below. So this is about Washington Poe, and he is a disgraced detective. And I want to say this takes place in England, but for some reason, something is making me think Wales. But I'm pretty sure it's England. And he is brought back to handle a case about from that a serial murderer is leaving the bodies of his victims at the stone circles, and nobody's making any headway. So they bring Poe back. Poe ends up pairing with this woman named Tilly Bradshaw. She's a genius, and she's like the technical computer information person, technical analyst. And the author doesn't specify that she's autistic, but she very much reads that way. And she's very unworldly and almost childlike despite her intelligence. And I didn't really like that aspect of it. Poe starts to sort of push Tilly out of her comfort zone because he wants her to kind of grow as a person. But something about Tilly's character bothered me, and I think it was the childlikeness. Like, Poe would say something to her, and she would say, "Yes, Poe," in this very, like, docile voice. I didn't care for that. But the plot was fantastic. This had me on the edge of my seat. I could not wait to find out what was going to happen next. I really liked Poe's character. He's a very no-nonsense cop who doesn't play politics. I loved the narrator's voice. It was deep and gruff, and I'm going to be honest, it was sexy. I enjoyed this narrator a lot. Trigger warnings for sexual violence against children and child abuse. So just be warned of those things. I am going to read the next book. I'm going to see if maybe Tilly has matured a little bit, and if so, I'm going to continue the series. If she remains docile and childlike, I'm probably going to stop reading this and maybe read another series by this author because I'm becoming a fan. So that was a good one. And then I have The Way I See It by Temple Grandin. So if you don't know who Temple Grandin is, she was born in the 1940s and everything seemed neurotypical. And by the time that she was like a preschooler, she had stopped speaking. And her mother took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, she's autistic and she's never going to speak. She's never going to be the child you want, and we recommend lifelong institutionalization. And Temple Grandin's mother was not going to have that. So her mother, through a series of different types of therapies and coaching and whatnot, Temple Grandin grew up to have a doctorate and to be a public speaker and a lecturer. and a writer. She's written quite a few books. And she builds, engineers machinery for the cattle industry. This book in particular is broken up into sections regarding different types of, or different things issues, I guess, or concerns regarding being autistic. And one of them is like understanding nonverbal autism. One is sensory issues. And there's sections here also about teaching concepts to children with autism. So it covers a lot of different types of information, but it covers them specifically, which I really appreciated. And this is not a book that just focuses on the struggles of being on the spectrum. There's a lot of information in here about harnessing an autistic person's or somebody on the spectrum, harnessing their strengths. And that while being autistic does come with struggles, that's something that, you know, all people have. But I do very much recommend this one. I'm going to read more of Temple's books because I love the information. I love the way that even though she's able to talk about some hardships and struggles, she's also very positive that, you know, being on the spectrum does not mean that somebody cannot be successful. She gives you ideas on the way some autistic people, the way they think or the way they see things, and how to maybe bridge a gap in education or communication. So very much recommend this one. I enjoyed it immensely. And the last 5-star read. So this was the first T. Kingfisher book I have ever read. And this is The Hollow Places. So a young woman is going through a divorce and she does not want to go live with her mom, which, you know, we can relate. And her uncle calls and says, honey, why don't you just come stay with me until you figure out what you're going to do? And she agrees. So her uncle owns and runs a museum of curiosities in a small town. And the main character, Kara, she used to spend a lot of time there and then later on worked there in high school. So she's very at home at this museum. And then her uncle has to go away for some medical care. And she's running the museum by herself, and she makes a discovery. And there's a side character that works at the diner next door. He is a gay man named Simon. I adored Simon. The banter between these two characters is absolutely hilarious. So when Kara makes this discovery, she and Simon decide that they are going to investigate. And that is what gets the ball rolling. And like I said, their conversations are like, I mean, oh, they're so funny. I read some of them to my husband. So like, for instance, they have this very serious conversation about, you know, this is not really happening. You know, it's toxic mold. That's what it is. We're having hallucinations from toxic mold. Oh yeah. It's completely normal for us to have the same hallucination. And that's what's happening. Definitely. So I very much, if you're going to start with T. Kingfisher, I would suggest this one. And like her other book, the tension starts out very slowly and with more of an atmospheric creep factor, and then it just gets more and more and more and more tense until you feel like you actually could scream. So very much recommend this. This is definitely going to be one of my top books of the year. And then the last book. So I actually read a physical copy of this, but ended up loaning it to my mom. Oh, actually, there's 2 more books to talk about. So anyway, I loaned this to my mom. So this is A Parent's Guide to High Functioning Autism by Sally Ozonoff. I'm just going to try to talk about this pretty quickly because This really didn't meet my expectations. Sorry, my hair's like in this Texas heat. So this didn't really meet my expectations. I have already done a lot of reading about ADHD and ASD, autism spectral disorder. And I guess when I read this, I realized that I'd already come across all of this information. But this is a great place to start if you are, you know, haven't really done a lot of research or reading. This is a great basis or great base to start with. So I'm not really going to give this a rating because I think it is a good book. It's an informative book, but it just didn't have what I was looking for. So then I listened to A Big Gay Wedding by Byron Lane. This was another 5-star for me. So you have Farmer Mom. Her name is Chrissy, but she's also referred to as Farmer Mom. And Farmer Mom runs a ranch in Louisiana for animals that nobody else wants or that are injured. And it's part of like the yearly field trip that the little town sends the elementary school kids to. And Farmer Mom has a son named Barnett. Barnett is a grown man. He went off to college and he never came back home. He stayed in California, but he would come back to the ranch for visits. So he's in California with his roommate. And the fact that Barnett is gay is a very badly kept secret in this small town. Just nobody talks about it, but everybody knows. So Barnett calls his mom and says, "Hey mom, I'm coming home. I've got some big news and we need to talk." And Farmer Mom is like, finally, he's going to move back home. He's going to take over the ranch and we're just going to be this great big happy family. So Barnett shows up and says, "Mom, I'm getting married to my roommate." And everything starts to just go batshit crazy. And Farmer Mom is struggling because she adores her son. He is the most important person in her life. And she hates this tension and unhappiness. And she doesn't want to hurt him, but she just wants him to just not be gay. Can he just not be gay? And Barnett adores his mother and loves her. And he wants her to be happy for him. And then there's the fiance, Isaiah. And Isaiah's family shows up to the ranch. And Isaiah's mother reminds me of the mom from Schitt's Creek. So funny. So there's just a lot of culture clash. Isaiah and his family, they're very wealthy, whereas Farmer Mom has worked her entire life. There is a lot of issues with this small southern town. I'm sure all of them are Baptist, and I say that as a southerner. And just a lot of coming to terms with different things. But the fantastic thing about this book is the author handles everything so gently. So you have these very difficult, just heart-aching topics of acceptance and love and unconditional love and what it means to be a mom and what it means to be a son and what does it mean to be in a romantic partnership. What does it mean to, have had your faith in the church for your entire life, but so much conflict. But the author, like I said, handles it gently and with empathy. So these issues are talked about and they are addressed and they are dealt with, but they're done in such a, I don't want to say lighthearted, but in a gentle manner. There was never anything so just gut-wrenching I wanted to just stop reading and take a break. I very much recommend this. It was a 5-star read for me. It hit all of the buttons. I love family dynamics. I love books set in the South. I love strong female characters. I enjoy quite a bit of humor in my books, especially ridiculous humor or dry humor, sarcastic humor. I love books that focus on parent-child relationships. So this just hit all the buttons for me. So very much recommend this on audio. I think it was amazing to listen to. And that is it. That is all of the books that I read in July. And I'm hoping that reading streak continues for me because I have a ton of books I'm looking forward to reading in August. So let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought of them. If you have an author that is similar to T. Kingfisher, please drop a comment below with that author's name, because I love those atmospheric, creepy fairy tale-esque books. So thank you very much for clicking on my video. I hope everybody has a wonderful summer and stays cool. And I will see you guys later. Bye.